Stabbed his girlfriend to death last year when she threatened to leave him. As part of a plea agreement, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
A man is sentenced to 30 years in prison after a hostage situation.
Exclusion of reasonable doubt. The court finds the factors are proven are sufficient to impose a sentence of death.
A man described as a jealous lover is on his way to prison tonight.
Finding that the prerequisites of law have been met and that a jury of his peers has unanimously found death to be the appropriate sentence.
Willie James Pye ending. The imminent ending of Willie James Pye in Georgia is a critical turning point in a case that has taken more than 30 years to resolve. Pye, who was found guilty of slaying Alicia Lynn Yarbrough in 1993, will be executed on March 20, 2024. This would be the first ending in Georgia in almost 4 years, and pentobarbital would be used in a fatal injection. The events leading up to Yarbrough's demise are terrifying. Chester Adams and a young sidekick had intended to rob Yarbrough's partner. They kidnapped Yarbrough, forced her to spend the night in a motel as they broke into her house and took belongings. Pye then shot her 3 times and her lifeless body was left on a dusty road. Pye and Adams first denied any participation, but once the young accomplice confessed, they were taken into custody. Pye received the demise penalty after being found guilty of a number of crimes, including physical misconduct, burglary, armed robbery, and malicious homicide. Pye's defense team has pushed for resentencing throughout the trial, arguing insufficient preparation for the sentencing part of the trial. They offered proof of Pye's difficult upbringing, which included deprivation, maltreatment, and neglect, in addition to their assertion that his impulse control was impaired by injury to his frontal lobe brain. The legal process has been intricate. Following a federal judge's first rejection, Pye's appeal gained momentum when a 3-judge panel of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals decided in favor of his attorneys.
Stabbed his girlfriend to death last year when she threatened to leave him. As part of a plea agreement, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
Exclusion of reasonable doubt. The court finds the factors are proven are sufficient to impose a sentence of death.
But in October 2022, the whole appeals court reversed this ruling. Pye's lawsuit had legal implications related to the COVID-19 epidemic. A court settlement put a temporary stop on the ending of some demise row inmates, subject to the achievement of certain requirements such as the public's access to COVID vaccines. Despite the fact that Pye's request for rehearing was denied prior to the fulfillment of the agreement's requirements, his attorneys contended that he should be covered by the agreement's safeguards, which are presently being litigated. Pye's ending was allowed to go on despite these legal ploys because the judge supervising his case decided that Pye was not protected by the agreement. The state attorneys rejected Pye's defense team's attempt to postpone his ending by entering the current case. The intricacies of Pye's case highlight more general discussions about the demise sentence, such as questions about the impartiality of legal counsel, the influence of traumatic events on criminal conduct, and the morality of the demise penalty itself. The impending ending of Pye has reignited debates over the effectiveness and morality of state-sanctioned endings and has brought attention to the role that the criminal justice system as a whole plays in resolving complex societal issues and administering justice in a fair and compassionate manner. Pye legal and factual intricacies. Willie James Pye's case involves a series of complex legal and factual intricacies that shaped the outcome of his trial and subsequent appeals. Pye was convicted of physical misconduct, sodomy, and slaying in connection with the November 1993 demise of Alicia Lynn Yarbrough. The prosecution's case hinged on evidence suggesting that Pye, along with 2 accomplices, planned to rob Charles Puckett, Yarbrough's partner, due to personal grievances and a desire for financial gain. Pye's alleged anger towards Puckett, coupled with his belief that Puckett had signed the birth certificate of a child Pye claimed as his own, provided a purported motive for the planned robbery. The events unfolded with Pai and his associates abducting Yarbrough from Puckett's residence, raping her at gunpoint in a motel room, and ultimately slaying her by shooting her 3 times. The prosecution presented a range of evidence to support these allegations, including witness testimonies, forensic findings such as DNA evidence linking Pai to the crime, and circumstantial evidence like the recovery of the slaying weapon and items used during the abduction. Throughout the trial, Pai's defense team vigorously challenged the prosecution's case, raising objections to the admissibility of certain evidence and attempting to cast doubt on the credibility of witnesses, including one of Pai's co-defendants who testified against him. Additionally, Pai's defense sought to introduce evidence suggesting an alternative narrative, including details about Yarbrough's alleged drug use and purported exchanges of physical activity for drugs. However, the trial court's rulings played a crucial role in shaping the course of the proceedings. Despite objections from Pai's defense, the court allowed corroborating testimony and evidence of prior threats made by Pai against the victim, arguing that they were relevant to establishing Pai's motive and intent.
A man described as a jealous lover is on his way to prison tonight.
Finding that the prerequisites of law have been met and that a jury of his peers has unanimously found death will be the appropriate sentence.
A man is sentenced to 30 years in prison after a hostage situation.
The court also upheld the admissibility of scientific evidence, such as DNA analysis, despite challenges from Pai's defense regarding its reliability and prejudicial impact. Furthermore, the prosecution strategically utilized Pai's pre-trial statements and inconsistencies in his testimony to undermine his credibility during cross-examination. While Pai's defense raised objections to these tactics, the trial court permitted the state's line of questioning, emphasizing Pai's statements and omissions to the jury. In the closing arguments, the prosecution referenced Pai's statements and character without objection from his defense, which later raised concerns about the propriety of these comments on appeal. However, the failure to object during trial limited the grounds for appeal regarding these issues. Pai's case exemplifies the intricate interplay between evidentiary rules, witness credibility, and constitutional rights in criminal trials. As Pai continues to assert his innocence and pursue legal avenues for appeal, the complexities of his case underscore the importance of procedural fairness and legal scrutiny in ensuring justice is served. Sentencing phase of trial. In the sentencing phase of a criminal trial, the court determines the appropriate punishment for a defendant who has been convicted of a crime. This phase is particularly crucial in capital cases where the defendant may face the possibility of the demise penalty. In the case of Willie James Pai, several key legal issues arose during this phase, each requiring thorough analysis and consideration. One of the issues raised by Pai was the state's cross-examination of his sister regarding their other brother's criminal convictions. Pai's sister testified during the trial that their brothers were often falsely accused, which opened the door for questioning about their criminal history. Under Georgia law, the state is entitled to conduct a thorough cross-examination on relevant issues, and Pai's sister's testimony provided a basis for exploring the credibility of their family members. Pai's challenge on this matter was ultimately found to lack merit. Another contention raised by Pai was regarding certain questions asked by the prosecutor during cross-examination. Pai alleged that these questions were improper and prejudicial. However, the court took appropriate action by withdrawing one question and sustaining Pai's objection to the other. Since Pai did not request further corrective action at the time, there was no reversible error. Additionally, Pai's failure to object to one of the questions during trial waived his right to challenge it on appeal. Pai also objected to statements made by the prosecutor during closing arguments, particularly regarding Pai's alleged future dangerousness and lack of remorse. While arguments about the defendant's future dangerousness are permissible if based on trial evidence, Pai argued that the prosecutor's assertions were speculative and not supported by the record. However, since Pai did not object to these statements during trial, any error would require a showing of a reasonable probability of changing the sentencing outcome, which the court found lacking. Additionally, Pai contested the trial court's instructions to the jury regarding aggravating and mitigating circumstances. Upon review, the court determined that the instructions were proper and aligned with legal standards established in prior cases. Ultimately, the court affirmed the demise sentence imposed on Pai, stating that it was not influenced by passion, prejudice, or arbitrary factors. The court also found the sentence proportionate to similar cases involving deliberate slayings during violent crimes like kidnapping, physical misconduct, and armed robbery. In a special concurrence, Presiding Justice Fletcher expressed reservations about the prosecutor's arguments regarding Pai's future dangerousness, citing the lack of evidentiary support. Fletcher argued that such speculative arguments could lead to the introduction of additional evidence during sentencing trials, prolonging proceedings and diverting attention from relevant issues. Fletcher also disagreed with the majority's conclusion regarding Pai's alleged lack of remorse, highlighting the absence of evidence supporting the prosecutor's claims. While acknowledging the prosecutor's improper arguments, Fletcher noted that Pai's failure to object during trial limited the grounds for appeal. Pai's sentencing phase involved nuanced legal arguments and procedural considerations. While certain aspects of the prosecution's conduct raised concerns, the court ultimately upheld the demise sentence, emphasizing the importance of adherence to legal standards and procedural fairness in capital cases. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.